What terrifying confession has someone told you while drunk? That they cheated on their husband with other friends in our group. I still haven't told anyone but my husband. How many of these other friends? Did you notice any strange interactions or looks between the wife and the friends? Sorry, but you're AST friend. Or at least to my values. My awesome boss at the time, who didn't say much about his life, confessed to me that his marriage wasn't something he wanted and that he's only staying in it for the love of his 2 young daughters. It was heartbreaking. Kinda heartwarming as well. I mean, he loves his children so much that he's willing to stay in an unhappy marriage. You'd say it's the least he could do, but I've heard enough stories of a parent FG up a child's childhood for pettier reasons. You've got a point there. I just hope he's able to find happiness with someone else in the future other than with his children. He deserves it. It says so much about Reddit that the top stories on here are about cheating, with the rape and abuse stories coming in second. You guys need to grow the FK up. Told me about the time he and his girlfriend had an abortion and about all the pain that it caused them. Edit to say emotional pain. If there was any physical pain, that wasn't discussed. They're still together decades later, and I don't know if he ever told her that he told me or not. Once at a college party, this big guy got upset, picked up the table and threw it across the room, shouting, "My uncle molested me." Everyone was terrified, but we all felt really bad for the guy. Immediately dismissed the thrown table after I read the uncle part. Hope the guy is doing amazing now. Truly. He had us in the first half, not gonna lie. Guy who got hit by table probably saw someone that had dressed up like the uncle across the room. A friend of mine died from a drug overdose. After the funeral, a mutual friend of ours and I were getting drunk when he broke down crying. He asked me if I remembered the time when he and our dead friend told me about an accident that they'd witnessed where they saw a truck driver die. I told him I did. He then told me the most FD up st. He said that our friend ran up to the dying man and stole his wedding ring. And that the man couldn't do anything but look up, terrified, at our friend as he was being robbed. I knew they were bad into drugs, but I never thought they could do anything like that. I grew up with them. They were like my brothers. I don't really trust anyone completely anymore. So that instance completely destroyed your trust in people? In what ways? No. My trust isn't completely destroyed. I just don't trust completely. I guess that I used to think that good people were incapable of doing truly evil things, and now I don't put anything past anyone. That is smart. Such a horrible and predatory thing those guys did. So you consider this guy a good dude still, but Pod 1 capable if evil? B.S. Commenting, so I remember to come back to this later. That they witnessed a mugging, stabbing outside of a bar, and did nothing but watch the person bleed on the sidewalk. I asked why they didn't call 911, and the excuse was that they knew the stabbing and didn't want to snitch. Also possible to just freeze up out of shock. The first shooting I witnessed, I drove a half-hour back to my apartment, sat down, and stared at a wall for God knows how long before thinking to call the police. By then, who knows what the FK had happened. The second. Yep, more than one. I just pulled into a parking lot a block over and made the call. They have a thick skull. Calling an ambo and the cops are two different things. Worst case, he could have lied and just said he saw some dude running away with a knife and a dude on the ground bleeding out and doesn't remember any facial details or whatever. Once had someone tell me while drunk, I need a girl with an open mind and tight VA. 'Cause I have a micro PS. That was pretty terrifying. Great pickup line. I need to write that down. The last 5 words will suffice. PS. That was really terrifying. Not drunk but high on acid, and my friend got super talkative and honest. He went to the local red light district to do a bit of window shopping. On this particular occasion, he decided that he wanted to purchase a young lady, so he picked out one and brought her back to a hotel room. They got down to business, at which point my friend found a PS under her skirt that she hadn't told him about. He was surprised but decided that since he'd paid for it he was going to keep going. During the course of it the young lady, gentleman put their finger up my friend's bumhole, losing a very sharp fingernail in the process and causing an AL fissure. He had to go to hospital and they gave him one of those soft rings to sit on. He'd been telling everyone that it was a sports injury. A coworker was pretty inebriated when he told me that he hates his life. He hates his partner. And the only reason he's still married to her is because he loves his daughter and doesn't want to lose her. Haha. I put Adderall in your beer. We're gonna party till the sun comes up, bro. Quote. Spiking people's drinks is so scummy. Is there any more to this story? At one point he whipped out a knife and put a hole in the surprisingly thin bathroom wall of the dive bar. SD carved his name above it. I had a massive mood swing and got in a really nasty parking lot fight. I woke up with dried blood on my knuckles, heart beating out of my chest, and paralyzing anxiety. The guy was like the Kenny Banya of our friend group. Always spastic and obnoxious, and taking things past the point of being entertaining. No one ever wanted to hang out with him one-on-one. I thought I was being a good guy by giving him a shot. This effectively got him ostracized from our friend group. Did he? If my ex were still in love with me I wouldn't be married to you. Quote. Oh my God. I still think about it. I don't think I'll ever forget it. It keeps me up at night sometimes. Police officer. Arrived at a stabbing call as a backup unit and ended up transporting the suspect back to cells. He was extremely drunk, high. He started talking semi-coherently in the back seat of my PC. And I was mostly ignoring him. At one point he said something like, "And this isn't even the first time I've done this. She was so young." And then he started bawling. I flipped on my recorder surreptitiously to see if he would say any more, but he didn't. He just cried and cried. Intox confessions are generally useless anyway. And once he sobered up and spoke to his lawyer, he denied having any knowledge. I talked to our major crimes guys but don't think they did anything with it. I still wonder though. It wasn't bravado. That's for sure. I heard my mom tell her friend I was a mistake and the reason her and my dad divorced. That's why you don't eavesdrop. I hope you're alright, man. I am fine. Yeah, it really isn't your fault. The truth is, your mom and dad were not responsible enough back then and weren't mature enough to make a marriage work with a kid on the way. If my man and I had a surprise pregnancy, we'd roll with it and make it work for everyone. I hope you have a good relationship with your parents now. Because just like all of us, we do mature and change our outlooks on life. If anything, your mom might even be wrong or in denial about why their marriage dissolved. My ex told me that he had been molested by his sister between the ages of 6 to 11. She was 9 to 14. His dad walked in once and didn't do anything. His own family knew that he was being sexually abused for years and did absolutely nothing to protect him. I'm afraid it's likely that the sister was being molested by the father. She was the mom's daughter from another marriage and her first husband had molested her. My ex's dad was the second husband and no, he didn't touch her. He just didn't care that she touched his son. What is he and the sister's relationship like now? Did it badly affect him mentally? My wife told me she had cheated on me. It's been a few months and we've worked everything out. But by God, it was terrifying when she said it. An ex-friend, not because of this, but other circumstances, basically suggested he had sex with his uncle just to piss off his aunt, mom's sister, and that he was saving it for when they had a big fight. Later he denied saying anything like that. Of course. But a while later we heard there was indeed problems within his family and they ended up moving from town. That was when I was like 16 to 17, yo. A former paratrooper turned private contractor told me about all the people he had killed and the human rights abuses and laws he had broken. I can't forget the stories. The guys that tell those stories usually, in my experience, borrow them from somewhere else. I did think that myself. But he wasn't telling these stories to brag. It was more of an emotional release. I did still think he embellished until a few years afterwards when I saw a news article on him which confirmed some key parts of his story. The ones who tell them sober are borrowing them. The ones who tell them plastered with a far-gone look in their eyes that the booze can't explain live them. My friend set me up with her brother's best friend. And me really trusting her judgment. I took a chance to be open-minded even though I wasn't really interested. I had met him before at a party years ago and we exchanged numbers. Talked briefly. But every time we chatted he was partying and I didn't want that kind of upbeat lifestyle, so connection naturally phased out. So jump back 4 years later and here I am dating the guy because my best friend insisted he's different. Anyhow, I'd say our dates were casual. We would meet up and fish. Have some drinks, and when we had a pretty good buzz on we would go walk around these outdoor trails. He would tell me old stories while we walked. Well, I wasn't from the area and just thought, wow, this guy really loves to fish and hike. Every single DN time we hung out we hiked to the same spot and the stories got more detailed. I assumed he was getting more comfortable and trying to open up more. Couple months in, we took the same hike absolutely hammered. I had never seen him that drunk before because he was taking a shot every time he caught a fish and it was 100 proof wild turkey. I was happy to be wasted because in the back of my mind I'm like, mother F this hike again, but he started to get weird. A story he has brought up about that area came up again. Basically one where him and his 3 brothers used to camp in a certain area we passed. He started explaining how St was weird that day and how these fucks he mentioned before died there. He had already told me that previously. But then he failed to mention he knew the people that did it. He started getting real jumpy and angry and elaborating on how each one of them died. And how it felt to hold a Glock looking into someone's face. He described it in such detail that it came off like a first-hand story and not this is what they told me it felt like, and I basically realized he'd been taking me to an area where him and his brothers had killed people and he was confessing it, reliving it with me. I was literally freaking out but kept my cool. Used my drunkenness to tell him I needed to go home immediately because I was going to be sick from the booze. I remembered OTW back like a deer hitting my brain why I stopped talking to him those years ago aside from partying. He texted me at 2:24 a.m. one morning. I was with my new boyfriend at the time and remember mentioning it to him. That someone had died and it wasn't even in the papers until a few days later. So he was a very proud murderer. Breaking it off with him took me telling him I was going to go live with my sister who just found she was pregnant and needs my help. I literally lied because I obviously couldn't trust his recoil actions. Also, my friend who set us up didn't believe me and quit talking to me because he was so gorgeous and perfect and I'm lucky. She would have done anything to be where I was. She had a boyfriend. Quote, people are insane. Edit. For those asking what I didn't call the police directly. I actually called my ex-roommate who was an active officer at the time. He told me that that murder had happened years ago and there's absolutely no evidence they could pin him down to. My statement would just be words on a file. But mainly, this was the real ST. He told me the factual reason to just move on was that his dad was a beloved sheriff in our community for 30+ years. I didn't know that. He never talked about his parents. He told me they lived out of town and he was alone. My officer friend told me even if someone did believe me there is no way they would take down the son of someone who is their own. Toughest ST to hear. Did you call the police? I'm gonna guess no. And it'll be deleted soon. It's also a 2-month-old account. You mean someone might have made this up? I got drunk with my uncle and we started talking about relationships. And as a game, I asked, "What's the biggest mistake you've ever made in a relationship?" Quote, "We went back and forth saying all the dumb and f'd up things we've done to the women in our lives. And it's escalating. And we're becoming more and more honest. Until eventually he shouts excitedly, 'I beat her.'" Quote, "It got dead silent. We drank quietly. Then went to bed. It's never really been the same since." Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos.